Hello and welcome to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. I didn't cover this topic earlier. I want to do it today. Vice President Harris over the weekend, or last week, basically in response to the Maine mass shooting, came out to push Australian gun bans and their gun buyback program, and basically said that she'd like to see those implemented here, or at least implied that that's what she would like to see here. So I want to talk about that because this is a total hoax. This is a total farce. Gun control does not work. Even the gun buyback programs, the gun confiscation programs do not work, as evidenced by the Australian gun buyback programs. It is just another lie for these dictators, for these authoritarian fascists sitting inside of the White House and controlling this country to take power away from you. Ask yourself this question: why is it when the vast majority of Americans, despite what happened in Maine that was horrible, evil, and tragic, the vast majority of law-abiding gun owners, overwhelmingly so, never, ever commit any type of crime using their weapons? But yet, when someone does, all of a sudden, weapons have to be taken away. Millions of weapons have to be taken away. Tens of millions of gun owners' rights need to be taken away because of the act of one person. That doesn't even make sense unless you are an authoritarian. So we're going to be talking about that. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. Today's show is brought to you by MyPillow.com. Mike Lindell at MyPillow.com has brought you fabulous products. And guys, get ready. Christmas is coming. There's lots of discounts to be had. There are products marked down over 60% in some cases. If you go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio podcast square at the top of the page, enter my name, Carl, C-A-R-L, as a promo code, or give them a call, 800-858-0263. I'm talking about My Pillow 2.0. You have mattress toppers, you have My Slippers, you have the Giza Dream Sheets, you even have dog beds there that are all discounted right now leading up to Christmas. Take advantage of those deals. American-made products, American manufacturing, American jobs. Help them out, MyPillow.com. You get to help this podcast out as well, and we certainly do appreciate that. All right, so let's dive right into this. So yeah, after the Maine, and I hate calling it a mass shooting and a mass shooter because I'm a shooter. You're a shooter. You own a firearm and you go out to the range on occasion and practice with your firearm. You're a shooter too. This guy is a murderer, but everyone saw it coming. Everyone saw it coming. As a matter of fact, it was just reported yesterday that the National Guard, this was Monday, October 30th, it was reported. The National Guard had reported to local police officers in Maine that this murderer, Robert Card, was just bat crazy. All right, bad expletive crazy, as some people would say. And there should have been, they have yellow red flag laws where police can go to a person's house, take away their firearms. They could have done that with him. They had plenty of notification. And for whatever reason, they did not do that. Despite the fact that this guy had been involuntarily institutionalized 2 weeks in the summer of this year, they chose not to do that. It's such a weird phenomena how these people that are undeniably mentally ill and crazy with plenty of warnings, people, even National Guard of Maine calling the local authorities and saying this guy is crazy, literally telling them, I think he will go on a shooting spree based upon, or this guy will be a mass shooter based upon the things that he's saying, and the authorities do nothing about it. It's weird. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but this is crazy. All right. So anyway, you had Vice President Harris had a knee-jerk reaction response to the mass murderer that used his gun in the Maine shooting. He killed 18 people, as far as I know. And I believe it was dozens more that were injured. And this is what Harris had to say at the time. She said, gun violence has terrorized and traumatized so many of our communities in this country, she says. At the event, she was at an event with the leader of of Australia at the time. And she went on to say, and let us be clear, it does not have to be this way, as our friends in Australia have demonstrated. So again, she had praised Australians' gun bans at the luncheon last Thursday with the Prime Minister of Australia. Harris, again, was referring to a series of gun buyback programs, hat tip to the Daily Signal. In the Commonwealth of Australia, the regulations followed what was a 1996 firearms massacre in Tasmania, where 35 people were murdered, and they began it with the National Firearms Agreement of 1996 that declared semi-automatic weapons illegal at that point, and prompted the surrender of close to 650,000 firearms. So basically, they confiscated 650,000 firearms across Australia after that one shooting where 35 people died. And I've seen this before. We do it here in Orlando, Orange. I've seen Orange County Sheriff's Department do it. I believe the OPD, Orlando Police Department, have done it. And I could be wrong on this. Maybe it wasn't OPD. But they would offer shoes for guns. And the only people that show up are people that are never going to use their guns in a crime. It's these bleeding heart liberals that show up and, oh, here's my gun. I don't want it to be used to kill somebody. Well, if you're locking it up, not keeping it in your car, keeping it on your person, you should be fine, and no one's stealing that gun. But obviously, if you leave it out, leave it in your car, you leave it inside of the home, maybe not in a safe or something, that's a different story. But what's funny is it's always these law-abiding citizens. The criminals never go in and turn in their guns for sneakers. It doesn't happen. But since this happened in Australia, the nation tightly restricted gun ownership and continued to buy back legally owned guns and confiscate illegally owned firearms. But a lot of people have not allowed the government to buy back their guns. Maybe if they already own them, that the government doesn't know anything about it, why would you say anything? If someone breaks it, why would you be a sitting duck? It's amazing. You get 35 people slaughtered, and then you ask people to become a sitting duck in case this were to happen again. That's just crazy to me. So the number of gun-owning households in Australia, they did decrease. However, the amount of guns purchased and owned by Australians increased by nearly double. Let me give you some numbers. While the past 27 years of gun restrictions in Australia have decreased the number of gun-owning households by half, so the number of gun-owning households have been cut in half. That's as of the 1996 act to confiscate firearms or buy them back, as they're called. But it's coercion, all right. But as of 2016, the number of firearms per licensed owner had increased from 2.1 to 3.9. 3.9, I believe that is percent. So in 2017, there were an estimated 3.6 million firearms in Australia, compared with 3.2, so that's million, compared with 3.2 million in 1996. And you say, well, Carl, that's not much of a jump. It is a huge jump when you consider there's just half the amount of gun owners in Australia now. And with half the amount of gun owners, there's at least 400,000 more guns in Australia as of this account. The newspaper noted, the Sydney Morning Herald, that in 1997, after Prime Minister John Howard's initial buyback of guns, there were an estimated 2.5 million firearms in the country at the time, and now there's 3.6. Now there's 3.6. So it hasn't quite doubled, but over 1 million more. So now you have more firearms, and guess what? You know what liberals always argue? Here's what the left always argues. They always say, listen, if you have fewer guns, that's going to equate to fewer crimes. Well, in Australia, and they always talk about Australia as an example, because crime has decreased in Australia, gun violence, quote unquote, has decreased in Australia. So it must be because of the gun buyback programs. But what the liberals never tell you is gun ownership increased in Australia. It's just a fake argument. Criminals are going to use guns, knives, a baseball bat, rope, whatever they can to kill you. Now, granted, a gun is a more efficient way to kill people. There's no doubt about that. But it's also a more efficient way to be able to defend life. For example, did you guys know? All right. And let me say this. Gabe, are you familiar with Cedric the Entertainer, the comedian? Steve Harvey, these people? Okay. All right. So years ago, this is when I was probably as carnal as Gabe. All right. So I went to a comedy. It was called the Kings of Comedy Tour. Did you ever hear about that? You remember hearing about that, Gabe? Kings of Comedy Tour back in the day? All right. So anyway, it was a long time ago. Kings of Comedy Tour. Cedric the Entertainer, Steve Harvey. I mean, he was big, but I think he had the Steve Harvey show back then. But I mean, Steve Harvey is way big, even much more famous today than he was then. And he was famous then. But Steve Harvey, Cedric the Entertainer, Bernie Mac. You guys might remember Bernie Mac. But one of the funniest things that stood out to me that night was Cedric the Entertainer and his comedy skit. And he basically did this comedy skit where he was like, I wish a mofo would. Now, he used the actual word, and you know what I'm saying when I say mofo, MF, right? But he was talking about walking a certain way. He did all these different jokes and examples of, I think basically like a black guy strolling with his woman or something like that. And just having that kind of stroll or that attitude, like I wish somebody would, do something to me, mess with me, basically I would beat them up, I would do, whatever. But the way he did it was just so hilarious. Well, you know what firearms do for people that would be victims of violent crimes? They give you the I wish a mofo would factor. Like, I'm not going to take this out to rob anybody. I'm not going to use my weapon to commit a crime. But if somebody comes up to me and tries to attack me, oh, I wish a mofo would. Because that criminal is going to get exactly what they deserve. And a firearm gives, especially for you women out there, it gives you the mofo factor. Excuse my French. All right. But it's true. 500,000 to 3 million gun stops, good gun stops, self-defense gun stops, or crime stops, I should say, using firearms every year. Every year. Let's do the low number. Let me look this up. Bear with me for just a second. So let's say 500,000 divided by 365 days of the year. Sometimes I forget how many days of the year there are in a year, but I always think of a Anita Baker song, 365 days of the year. You know that song, Gabe? All right. So, no, that can't be right. All right. Let's do this again. 500,000, divided by 365 days. Okay. So, all right, on a low number, that puts us at 1,370 times per day in the United States that someone uses a firearm in order to stop a criminal from committing a crime. So on a low number, on a slow day, the day that this murderer in Maine killed 18 people, at least 1,370 would-be victims were saved as a result. On that same day, were saved by someone who had a firearm on their side to defend their life or the life of others. Why are these stories hardly ever reported? Because the narrative would break down. The narrative would completely break down that guns are bad for society. When you have 1,370 people being saved as in direct comparison, as sad as it is, to 18 people being killed, which side do you want to err on? 1,370 at a low number, or 18? A person with common sense would add or err on the side of saving 1,300 lives per day. Now, let me also share this. This is very important. This news came out last week, and I do want to share with you some headlines too quickly before we go. And by the way, this is self-defense in Australia. They consider it a privilege. And now Harris, she oversees, I didn't even know this existed, the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. So again, she's a big, anti-gun, but so is the left. But the goal is to take away your power. The Second Amendment isn't for hunting. You can't hunt with a firearm in the United States of America. That's not what it's for. The Second Amendment was specifically designed so that a citizen could protect themselves from a government that wants too much power, that wants to take away your power, an authoritarian, a dictator. That's what it's about. More guns, less crime. This shooter, was 40 years old, a U.S. Army reservist, had been described as mentally ill, including by relatives. Investigators think he used a .308 rifle, which is, good Lord, it's a powerful rifle. But Harris did not mention the suspect's mental illness. She did not mention that co-workers of his, at least in the National Guard, called police months ahead of time and said, this guy is a threat. This guy is threatened. This guy will become a mass shooter. They said that. So these red flag laws, yellow flag laws in the case of Maine did not work. Did not work. These laws don't matter if they're not enforced. And then they want to take away the rights of other Americans. And think about this too. In areas like D.C., Muriel Bowser came out last week and she proposed a new law that would make it easier for cops to arrest criminals in danger-ridden cities after defunding the police. So she was all on board of defunding the police during the George Floyd riot era until she was not. But now crime has skyrocketed and Mayor Bowser is changing her tune. She's resisted now new calls to defund the police despite opposition from her own DC City Council. They cut $32 million from her proposed police budget. And this was after it had already been cut, by the way, and redirected $9.6 million from police to violence interruption. Bowser instead has pushed for hiring more cops in the Capitol. The mayor has resisted calls to defund the police and has been an advocate for increasing the size of the force from 3,580 to 4,000. Now, she sounds like a hero because she's not, because initially she was on the defund the police bandwagon, but her election is drawing near. All right. And so all of a sudden she's back on the fund the police bandwagon as crime in the Washington, D.C. area begins to absolutely soar. I'm sorry for those of you that are watching on YouTube and Rumble. We're working right now with a camera. I'm just being open and honest with you. We're working with a camera where I'm not using the old camera anymore, the camera we were using. This camera gives us better quality. Unfortunately, the studio, which is essentially a spare bedroom, is under renovation here. So we gotta, if I pan the camera around, it will look horrible. But anyway, it also cuts out every 30 minutes. So because it is an older style camera. So nonetheless, that's what's going on. If you see me doing that, see me reaching my hand up, forgive me if you're on YouTube and Rumble. All right. But we will have that straightened out by next week. The only reason the studio is in the disarray that it's in right now is solely because of Gabe. So I just want to make that clear for any of you that want to complain. Gabe, do you want to give out your email? And just in case. All right. So anyway, moving on now. As of October 24th, listen to this. This is a city in which, defund the police, gun control. I want you to understand how gun control doesn't work and how it's so silly. And blue cities know this. Blue city mayors, they know this. But it's still, they desire power more than they desire your safety. Man, that's a good slogan. These blue city mayors desire their power more than they desire your safety. Because let me give you some stats of Washington, D.C. Homicide is up 33% since they've decided to defund the police, right? Robbery is up 70%. This is just in the last couple of years. 70% robberies are up. Motor vehicle theft rose 102%. Theft is up 22%. According to data from the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department, this year there have been 225 murders. This has put D.C. on track to overtake 2021 as the bloodiest year that they've seen in 2 decades, all right? So D.C.'s annual point-in-time count, which took place on January 25th, found that the total number of homeless people increased by 11.6% this year from 2022. So these people, these mayors in these blue cities that are soft on crime, at least when it comes to Democrats, and extremely harsh, like Mayor Bowser was when it comes to J6 protesters, their cities are in disarray because the very things in which they fight are hurting their citizens. Gun control hurts citizens. All right, defunding the police hurts citizens, and I'm talking about law-abiding citizens. This crap doesn't work. Vice President Kamala Harris knows it, and shame on her for telling people otherwise. Guys, I appreciate... Oh, actually, man, I wanted to bring you guys some of these. Let me just share this. Before we go out. I was getting ready to close it, but you see how I reeled that back. I just have to share this because this came out yesterday, and I do want to make sure... I won't go into great detail or specificity at this time, but I do think it's very, very important to share. Here's 2 things. 82,000 emails where Joe Biden used a pseudonym are unearthed. 82,000 times Joe Biden used a fake name. A fake name. Why would he do that? Let's click on that. So, step aside Hillary. This from Just the News. Joe Biden may become king of email scandals. As a new stash alarms investigators, a mountain of evidence, more than 82,000 private emails authored by Joe Biden under different names and located by the National Archives could be boon to Biden investigators and to a public with a right to know what its leaders have said and have done. The National Archives, a stunning admission that it has located 82,000 pages of potentially government-related emails from Joe Biden's pseudonyms. Private accounts not only threatens to supplant Hillary Clinton in the emails of email scandals, it could also provide a boon to the ongoing federal and congressional investigations and to the Biden family. The public is also sure to scrutinize the matter in upcoming elections. The admission came out yesterday, Monday, as part of a FOIA request or lawsuit brought by the Southeastern Legal Foundation, so good work on their behalf. They say we're duty bound to make sure that everybody's following the law here. You know, all these people are going after Trump when it's all projection. All the stuff they're blaming Trump for, Biden did. That's what the left does. It's projection. So we're duty bound to make sure that everybody's following the law here. And it sure looks like that's questionable at this moment. This according to Representative Scott Perry of Pennsylvania. But 82,000 pages of emails where he used a pseudonym. Perry told the John Solomon Reports podcast that lawmakers in Congress must take action to ensure all the emails are preserved, given the history of Hillary Clinton's team trying to delete her private emails or to destroy the devices they were stored on. We knew the left were going to do this. Perry said, Hillary taught us, and why would we think that Joe Biden would be any different? And as long, he continues, as long as that's the case, I think we got to make sure that, that Joe Biden doesn't have a hammer sitting close to his phone, or, I don't know what they smashed him with hammers. I don't know if they set them on fire. They used bleach bit on the server. We got to make sure that the American people can see what was so important to keep from the American people as one of the highest elected officials in the land. And the only way to do that is to make sure that that stuff is preserved. All right. So most of it is more quotes. You got some stuff from Ron Johnson. But anyway, the major news, the more than 82,000 private emails authored by Joe Biden under different names. All right, this came out yesterday, October 30th. Hunter Biden received a $250,000 loan from a Chinese businessman just 3 months after his father launched his 2020 presidential campaign. So basically, these people were still scandalous while Joe Biden was even running for president. Still using and actually capitalizing on the Biden name while Joe Biden was running for president. And frankly, what better time to do it? He later transferred the debt to a Hollywood lawyer that he befriended, according to evidence gathered by federal and congressional investigators. So in other words, you get Hunter Biden that gets a $250,000 loan from a Chinese businessman that he obviously is not going to pay back. He hands the bill over to a friend of his, a Hollywood lawyer, to pay the bill back for him. And so essentially, there you get, Hunter Biden gets $250,000. The House Oversight Committee first disclosed a few weeks ago that Hunter Biden had gotten a $250,000 wire in July 2019 and used his father's address in Delaware for the transfer. It was one of the later known foreign payments that Hunter Biden received before he fell on hard times. And now we know that he also got one in 2020. Pretty freaking amazing. This family is corrupt as all get out. I just want to make sure there's nothing else I can bring you here. I just want to make sure there's no headlines that obviously you still have the Israel-Iran war that is still occurring right now. And I hope Israel smashes them. All right, so again, UN General Assembly demands Israel work toward a truce, ceasefire, and refuses to condemn Hamas. I had Benjamin Netanyahu actually cover that in an earlier podcast, so I hope you see that. Cornell University placed on lockdown over the weekend due to threats to the Jewish Center. Man, it's pretty amazing how all of these places that sadly many Jewish donors have given to really hate them. A lot of these universities. Guys, pull away from these universities. A judge orders Biden administration to cease cutting razor wire along the Texas southern border. That's a win for A.G. Paxton, who the deep state was after, and rhinos in the Republican Party as well. What else here? Newsom makes his conciliatory trip to communist China. Embarked on a trip to China last week and faced criticism for its stated purpose of discussing climate change and for coming during a time of global turmoils as wars rage in both Israel and Ukraine. But now the details of the governor's visit are facing their own flack as he visited with leaders in the country, including Xi Jinping. Newsom was pressed on what he did and didn't discuss with them. He was criticized for the trip's itinerary and locations. In addition to various viral moments, Newsom has been accused of having ambitions to ascend to a higher office and has been floated as a successor to Joe Biden as he continues to build his national and international profile. And you guys, you know what he's doing? He's recognizing that China is the big dog. And he's given the power to China. He's helped give him power to China. Gavin Newsom does. This kiss butt move is absolutely disgusting, in my opinion. But these are just some of the news in some of the stories in the news today. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. All right, guys. Anyway, I've kept you long enough. And, California wind and solar farms closing because there are not enough power lines. Isn't that interesting? This stuff is a total joke, this global warming stuff. All right, guys, listen. I'm sorry. This is me just kind of rambling. So I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Excuse me. And please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. Please don't forget to help out our friend Mike Lindell at mypillow.com. Click on the radio podcast square, enter my name, Carl, as a promo code, or give them a call at 800-858-0263. Get some early Christmas shopping done. Get some birthday presents bought early. Whatever it may be for, we would certainly appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, True Social, Getter, Facebook at The Carl Jackson Show is where you can find me. And until next time, don't grow weary doing good, and God bless you.